What do you do when the woman you built your whole life around tells you you're not enough? Or a mother that walks away from her babies before they even learn to walk? Can a mother be that cruel to her children? Join us as we find out in this beautiful story. It was just before dawn and the air was still. Inside the small, cracked mud house of Godwin, something was shifting, something deeper than silence. Godwin had just finished warming pap for the twins. Mira and Tiara were only 7 months old. He fed one with a spoon while rocking the other with his foot. He didn't notice at first that Cecilia, his wife, was dressed. She had worn a new tight jean trouser. Her face was powdered. Her lips painted red. Her small travel bag rested by the door. He looked up. "Where are you going this early, Sissy?" She didn't blink. "I can't do this anymore, Godwin," she said, voice flat. "I'm not cut out for suffering. I didn't marry to sit in a leaking house and eat once a day." He set the spoon down, heart thudding. "Sissy, I know it's hard. But we're trying. The girls need you. I need you." She laughed, but there was no joy in it. "They'll be fine. You'll be fine. Me? I'm done trying. I've seen what life can be, and I want more. Not this crawling kind of living. Even if not for me," he said, stepping closer, "stay for them. They're just babies, Cecilia. Mira is still running a fever. Please." She looked him in the eyes. "They'll survive." A black car honked outside. She turned, picked up her bag, and walked out. Just like that. No kiss on the girls' foreheads. No goodbye. Just her perfume in the air and the sound of her slippers fading. Godwin stood in the doorway, holding Tiara, who had begun to cry again. Mira followed, as if she understood what just happened. Godwin dropped to the floor and held them close, his body trembling, the tears finally coming. He didn't scream. He didn't curse. He just whispered, over and over again, "It's okay. Papa is here. Papa is still here." That evening, he tied a wrapper around his waist and walked into the market square with his daughters. He begged for leftover baby formula. He offered to carry firewood for people. He came back with tired feet, but the girls smiled when he made silly faces at them by lantern light. That night, as the rain tapped gently on the roof, he made them a promise. "You will never feel the weight of our absence, not while I'm breathing. But love alone does not pay school fees. Or buy medicine. Or feed 2 growing girls." And this was just the beginning. The next few years came like harmattan wind, dry, dusty, and unforgiving. Godwin no longer had time to mourn. After Cecilia left, every morning became a battlefield. By the time Mira and Tiara were 2, he had taught himself how to grind oji, wash napkins, and braid tiny cornrows. He carried them on his back, sometimes both at once, while pushing a wheelbarrow in the market to earn coins. He'd come back with firewood, soup ingredients, and a tired smile. Neighbors watched in silence. Some pitied him. Others mocked him behind his back. He should give them away, they whispered. He's just one man. What can he do? But Godwin never listened. He called them his queens. Every time he looked into their eyes, he saw the reason not to quit. When the girls turned 5, the village school announced enrollment. Godwin had no savings in a bank, but he had something. He had managed to set aside small amounts from selling cassava and maize from his small farmland. And on days when there was no work on the farm, he pushed a wheelbarrow at the market to make extra money. His hands were always dirty, but his heart stayed clean. Still, the school list hit him like a blow to the chest. Registration fee, 2 uniforms, exercise books, pencils, sandals. That night, he sat under the mango tree, holding his old transistor radio. It was the last thing in the house that reminded him of better days. He turned it over in his hands, thinking of how Cecilia once danced to its music. But now it was just an old box that made noise. It couldn't buy notebooks. It couldn't pay school fees. He took a deep breath and whispered, "You can't eat memories." The next morning, he took the radio to the market. He exchanged it for 1,000 naira and a small packet of chalk. It was just enough to get both girls into school and buy a few writing books. On the first day of school, Mira wore oversized slippers. Tiara's uniform had to be folded twice at the waist to fit. But they both marched proudly, lunch tins swinging. Godwin followed them halfway, then stood under a tree and watched them go. The teacher, Madam Nkiru, called him aside. "Their handwriting is sharp for children this small. They are special." He nodded, smiling faintly. "They have to be." But he was tired. Every night, his back ached from the wheelbarrow walk. His eyes stung from cooking over firewood. The thatched roof above their heads had started to leak again. And now he had to buy exercise books. One evening, Tiara came back from school with a drawing, stick figures of her, Mira, and Godwin. Under it, she wrote in clumsy letters, "My daddy is my best friend." He folded the paper gently and kept it in his shirt pocket for weeks. Even when the rain wet him, he made sure it never got soaked. Still, the bills kept coming. The needs kept growing. And the sacrifices were just beginning. But how many more things could a man sell before he began to lose parts of himself? The girls were now 8 years old, and they were growing fast. Too fast. Tiara had started asking questions like, "Why don't we have a television like others?" Mira wanted to know why their sandals had holes while other children had new ones every time. Godwin answered with silence most times, but sometimes, he would smile and say, "Because our dreams are bigger than shoes." He still worked both the farm and the market. During rainy season, he planted maize, groundnut, and cassava. During dry spells, he pushed the wheelbarrow, fetched water for people, and helped repair fences for small pay. Every kobo he earned went into books, uniforms, food, and school levies. But the farm was growing tired. The soil wasn't as rich as it used to be. Weeds were harder to fight. His cutlass was dull, and his boots had long given way to bare feet. Still, he tilled the ground like it owed him something. One evening, after a long day on the farm, Godwin sat under the mango tree with a bowl of boiled maize. Mira and Tiara sat beside him, swinging their legs. "Papa," Mira said softly, "our teacher said we should bring 400 naira each for excursion. They are taking us to the city museum." He nodded slowly. "When is it?" "Next week." He didn't have the money. He had only 200 naira left after buying soap and kerosene. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept hearing the girls laugh in his mind, imagining them with the other children, excited, pointing at statues and taking photos. He couldn't rob them of that. The next morning, he stood by his farmland, eyes scanning the length of it. It was the last plot he had not yet touched, the one he swore he'd never sell. It was the land his father left him. The land that had fed him during the worst years. He walked to the community leader's compound and made an offer. The chief looked at him in disbelief. "You want to sell the last piece?" Godwin looked at the ground. "It's for their future. I have no other thing left to give but this." That afternoon, he sold half the plot. With the money, he paid for the excursion, bought 2 new pairs of sandals, notebooks, and even a bag of rice. The girls danced when he gave them the forms for the trip. Tiara hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. "You're the best daddy in the whole world." He smiled, but deep in his chest, something felt like it was slowly tearing. The land beneath his feet, his last security, was slipping away. What happens to a tree when its roots are cut little by little? The excursion changed something in Mira and Tiara. After they returned from the trip to the city museum, their eyes were wider. Their minds, hungrier. They spoke of buildings that touched the sky, of doctors in white coats, and of a lawyer they saw standing before a judge. That day, Tiara said, "Papa, one day, I want to wear a white coat like that doctor." Mira added, "And I want to speak for people who have no voice, just like the lawyer." Godwin nodded, his heart pounding slowly like a drum in a quiet night. "Then you must read. Read like your future depends on it. Because it does." From that day, the twins read by the dim light of a kerosene lantern every night. Even when mosquitoes bit their legs, even when thunder roared outside, even when Godwin coughed from the smoke of the cooking fire, Mira and Tiara kept reading. By the time they were 10, the headmistress had called for a PTA meeting. Godwin wore his only shirt with a collar and walked to the school, hands rough and dusty from the farm. "Your daughters," the headmistress began, "are different. Not just smart, but driven. We've never seen anything like them." Godwin lowered his head, humbled and proud. "They take after their mother in brains," he said. "But maybe they got the fight from me." She smiled. "They've been shortlisted for a regional scholarship exam. If they pass, their entire secondary education could be funded." It was like hearing a door creak open in a house where every window had been sealed shut. But preparing for the exam came with its own cost, extra books, exam registration fees, and new school shoes. Mira's were completely worn out. Tiara had already stitched hers twice. That week, Godwin took his last bag of dried maize to the market. He hoped for a good price, but buyers were few. The ones who came wanted to underpay. He argued until his voice grew hoarse. Eventually, he sold the bag for less than it was worth. When he returned, he found Mira waiting at the entrance. "Papa," she said, eyes wide, "someone came today." "Who?" "A woman. She said she knows Mama. She asked how we are doing." Godwin's heart stopped for a moment. He sat down without a word and looked into the distance. "Did she leave a message?" "She just said, 'Tell Godwin that Cecilia is learning the hard way that God doesn't fill an empty heart.'" He looked away. That night, he couldn't sleep. What happens when the past you buried tries to return, and you're not sure if you're ready to face it? The next few weeks passed in silence. Godwin never mentioned Cecilia's name again. Mira and Tiara didn't ask either. It was as if her memory had knocked gently on their door, and they'd quietly closed it again. But inside Godwin's heart, the door had been forced open. He began to see her in strange places, in the folds of Tiara's smile, in the sharpness of Mira's eyes. The pain hadn't disappeared, it had only been covered, like a wound under old cloth. Still, life had to go on. The scholarship exam drew near. Godwin spent nights helping the girls revise, even though he didn't know half of what they were studying. He'd sit with them, nodding as they read, occasionally dozing off with his hand still resting on a textbook. To raise extra money for the exam day expenses, Godwin picked up more menial jobs, cleaning gutters, packing sand at construction sites, fetching water for nearby restaurants. His hands became even rougher. His cough worsened from all the dust. But when he saw the girls smile after solving a math problem or pronouncing a big English word, the pain faded, for a moment. On the day of the exam, he woke them early. He helped them iron their uniforms over a hot metal plate and gave them a small envelope of money for transport and lunch. "Do your best," he said. "That's all I ask." "Papa," Mira said, holding his hand, "we'll make you proud." And they did. The results came out 2 weeks later. Both girls had not only passed, they had topped the list. Their tuition for secondary school was now covered. Full scholarship. New uniforms. textbooks, and stationery. The whole village buzzed with the news. Some people who once mocked Godwin now clapped him on the back and said, "You've done well, Godwin. You raised lions." He nodded politely, but inside, he was tired. Joyfully tired. When Mira and Tiara received their scholarship letters, Godwin didn't speak for almost a full minute. He just sat on the edge of the bed, eyes wide, lips trembling. He looked at the official envelope again and again, running his fingers over the bold letters. Full academic scholarship, it read. From JSS 1 to SS 3. He had been digging a pit latrine that morning for 2,000 naira. His clothes still smelled of mud and sweat, but none of that mattered now. His daughters were going to school, for free. No more borrowing. No more selling chickens or maize. No more choosing between buying exercise books or buying pepper. Mira danced barefoot around the room. Tiara hugged him so tightly, he felt her heart beating fast against his ribs. "You see, Papa," she whispered. "Your suffering is not in vain." Godwin didn't cry, but something inside him melted. It was the first time in years that hope didn't feel like a lie. As they entered secondary school, things became more serious. New subjects. Tougher exams. Competition. Mira found her strength in logic and public speaking. Tiara gravitated toward science. By their third year, everyone in the village knew the girls with matching names, Mira and Tiara, daughters of the poor man with the strong back. Though the scholarship covered most things, Godwin still had to provide pocket money, school project fees, transport fares, and food. He worked through malaria. He worked through back pain. He sold firewood, helped build fences, even cleaned public toilets when the dry season was harsh and farm work dried up. By the time the girls wrote their WAEC, people had stopped calling him that poor man. They started saying, "That's Godwin, the one with the twin stars." The twins passed with flying colors. University came next, and once again, they were noticed. Mira won a debate scholarship to study law. Tiara's grades earned her a merit grant to study medicine. Both left the village for the big city. Godwin saw them off at the motor park, pressing 2 small Bibles into their hands. "Don't forget who you are," he said. "And don't forget where we came from." The next 4 years were both hard and beautiful. Mira called every Sunday to tell him about courtroom simulations. Tiara sent pictures of her in white lab coats and talked about surgeries she observed. Godwin kept every photo in a small box under his pillow. On hard nights, he would open it and smile in the dark. Then one day, they both returned home, degrees in hand, shoulders high, smiles wide. "Papa," Mira said as she knelt, "I'm now a lawyer." "And I'm now a doctor," Tiara added. Godwin touched both of their heads. "I told the world that you were queens. They just didn't believe me yet." That afternoon, the house was full of music, food, and laughter. The compound was quiet that evening. The music had faded, the guests had gone, and the leftover jollof rice was packed into bowls. Godwin sat on his wooden stool under the mango tree, the same tree where he had once wept with babies in his arms. Now those babies were women, one a doctor, the other a lawyer. Mira and Tiara sat nearby, their long gowns brushing the dusty ground. They were discussing how to renovate the house and take their father to the city. "You've given us everything," Tiara said. "Now it's our turn to give you peace." Godwin smiled, but there was something behind his eyes that hadn't left since morning. He cleared his throat. "There's something I need to tell you both." The girls turned to him quickly. They knew that tone. It was the voice he used when the truth was heavy. This morning, He said, "A woman came to see me." He paused. The words didn't want to come out. "She brought news about your mother." The air shifted. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Mira's expression darkened. Tiara looked away. "She's sick," he said. "Very sick. The woman said she's dying. Alone. The man she left with is gone. Her friends too. There's no one left. She asked if she could see you both, just once." The silence that followed was sharp, like broken glass between them. Mira stood up. "She left us, Papa. She walked away when we couldn't even crawl. Why does she want us now that we're standing tall?" Tiara's voice trembled. "She chose her comfort over our cries. And now we should run to her because she's in pain." Godwin didn't argue. He only nodded slowly. "I know. I felt the same anger for years. But I have made peace. And I think peace is not a gift we give for the other person, it's a gift we give to ourselves." The twins didn't respond. They sat in silence for a long time. The next day passed quietly. Then another. On the third day, Mira knocked on her father's door. "Send for her," she said. Tiara stepped forward too. "She can be admitted at my hospital. But we are not promising anything more than treatment." A week later, Cecilia arrived, weak, thin, coughing. Her eyes were sunken, her beauty faded. But when she saw the twins, she collapsed to her knees and began to cry. "I don't deserve your faces," she sobbed. "But if the last thing I see before I die is your forgiveness, I rest in peace." Neither Mira nor Tiara moved at first. Then, slowly, Tiara helped her up. Mira fetched a stool. The mother who once abandoned them, now sat between the two daughters she thought she'd never see again. But would healing come in time? Or was it already too late? Cecilia lay on the hospital bed, her body frail, her skin pale like old cloth left too long in the sun. The diagnosis had confirmed what everyone feared, late-stage complications from an untreated infection. It had spread quietly, silently, like regret. Tiara monitored her charts, adjusted her drips, and spoke only when necessary. Mira sat by the window during visits, arms crossed, watching her mother from a distance. There was no shouting. No tears. Just the quiet tension of old wounds reopening without warning. Cecilia tried to speak one evening, her voice dry and cracked. "I watched you both from a distance, in my dreams. I told myself you didn't need me. That maybe you were better off. But the truth is, I was a coward. I chose myself. And I paid." No one responded. She turned her eyes to Godwin, who stood by the door, watching quietly like he had done for years. You raised them. You did what I should have done. And now you're the only one who truly knows them." Godwin stepped forward slowly, reached into his pocket, and handed her a folded paper. It was Tiara's childhood drawing, the one where she had written, "My daddy is my best friend." Cecilia took it with shaky hands. Her eyes welled. "I deserve nothing. But I thank you for not teaching them to hate me." Later that night, Tiara stayed behind after her shift. She wiped her mother's forehead and sat at the edge of the bed. "I'm not doing this because I understand you," she said softly. "I'm doing this because Papa taught us grace. You didn't raise us, but he raised us not to carry poison in our hearts." Mira entered the room, holding a small container of soup. "It's something," she said. "You're not strong enough to fast and confess at the same time." For the first time in many years, Cecilia laughed. It was weak, broken, but real. The three of them sat in silence for a long time, the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. The next morning, Tiara came in early to check on her. Cecilia was gone. She had passed peacefully in her sleep, hands resting across her stomach, the folded paper still clutched gently in her fingers. Mira arrived moments later. She didn't cry immediately. She just stood at the doorway, lips trembling, heart heavy. She waited for this moment, Godwin said quietly. To make peace. To go in peace. They buried her on a quiet hill near the edge of town. No crowd. No speeches. Just a simple grave and a prayer. As the sun set that evening, Tiara whispered, she didn't die forgiven because she deserved it. She died forgiven because we needed to let go. And for the first time since they were babies, the weight of their past began to lift. Months passed. The dry season came and went, and with it, the quiet returned to Godwin's home. But this time, it wasn't the quiet of sorrow. It was the peace that comes after a storm, when all that could be broken has been broken, and what remains is strong enough to carry on. Mira and Tiara stayed longer in the village now. They had started renovations on the old house. The leaking roof was replaced. The walls were repainted. New furniture arrived from the city, piece by piece. The compound that once echoed with the cries of hungry babies now echoed with laughter, planning, and healing. Godwin no longer pushed wheelbarrows or tilled hard soil. Every morning, he sat under the mango tree, his tree, and watched his daughters move through the world like queens. Sometimes he'd just close his eyes and listen to their voices. That was enough. One morning, as the sun rose lazily over the trees, Mira joined him under the tree with a steaming cup of tea. Papa, she said, we are setting up a scholarship in your name for single fathers raising children alone. We'll start with this village first. Godwin stared at her, eyes wide. In my name. She nodded. You planted seeds in dry ground, and they grew. That kind of story shouldn't be forgotten. Tiara joined them moments later, a file in hand. And we are opening a small clinic here. For people like Mama. People who wait too long. People who feel forgotten. Godwin looked at both of them. Do you know what you've done? He asked, voice thick with emotion. You've turned my pain into purpose. You've taken the ashes of our past and built a fire to warm others. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Mira said, we forgive Mama. But it's your love that shaped us. That night, the village gathered in the compound. The local chief gave a short speech. Children danced. Old women sang. The mango tree was lit with tiny lights. It was no royal palace, but to Godwin, it was everything. At the end of the celebration, Godwin stood, eyes wet, voice steady. To every parent who is struggling alone, he said, don't give up. You may be sowing in pain now, but if you don't stop watering your seed with love, one day, it will grow into a tree that gives shade to others. The crowd clapped. And under that mango tree, once soaked in tears and sorrow, 3 people stood. Proof that even broken beginnings can have beautiful endings. Moral of the story, sometimes, the ones who walk away teach us strength. But the ones who stay teach us love, sacrifice, and grace. Never underestimate the power of one person's faith in their family, even if all they have left is a promise and a piece of dry land. If this story moved you, follow for more emotional African tales that carry real-life wisdom and heart. Share this story to remind someone that sacrifice is not foolish. And that love always has the final word. The end.